Okay, another day, and how close are we to World War III? So, before I start, I would like everyone to just take a minute and reflect on history and realize that back in World War II, the British, the one thing the British were masters at is disinformation, and they used it. Disinformation and all these strange effects, and that to a degree where it really did change the course of the war. So, focus on that. What I'm going to do is tell you what's been happening in the past 24 hours. We've been in contact with people in the Ukraine. We've been watching both news agencies and any type of information that we can get. Now, like I said about the disinformation, we all know ourselves that um, just in our country alone, the past couple of years, all the stuff with the media and what they're saying, you know, you really can't tell what the actual truth or what the actual situation is. So, like I said, with all this stuff going on, tried contacting on Skype and talk to different relatives that are living there in the Ukraine, okay, and what has been going on. So after an exhaustive day yesterday, which we stayed in touch and we were able to listen to the Ukrainian news broadcasts, and we were also able and are still doing it today, listening to different Russian news agencies, which for a time in the afternoon, so it was at night there, but for a period of hours, my wife was not able to access one of the main TV channels that live streams out of Moscow. But that came back in this morning, and sometime early in the morning, we were able to access most of Russian streaming, live broadcast, and everything else. So, what happened yesterday? So, we're talking to the family, okay, and apparently what the Ukrainian news said is we thought by the end or by Saturday morning, they said the Russians were encircling Kiev and that the president would open negotiations and start to talk with the Russian government. Okay. Somehow in our time, from when we heard this Friday, probably in the evening, Friday there, until the morning, in the Ukraine, this changed. There was no talk. The president's making these videos where he's standing in front of Parliament and the other house. I'm still here. I didn't leave. The Russian news agency said that they already got him and his family in Poland, and the United States offered to put him somewhere in Florida, probably in a safe house right next to Manuel Noriega or something. Um, so And he made this thing saying, no, I'm here. I didn't leave. Okay. And the Russian advance kind of halted. Now, the Ukrainian news and some of my family members believing this and saying they've heard rumors from people who know people that know this is true is that there was this huge casualty rate when the Russians closed in. Ukrainian forces defeated them and killed them at a ratio of 1 to 4. So, casualty rate 1 to 4. And this is what halted the Russians, okay, is that they were being obliterated by the forces there. And also, at this point, so there was rhetoric about the bodies being there, the Red Cross being called in, and the whole war, and then they had to get more people, and this, and that's why they're not advancing. Which realistically, I believe negotiations were started. they were getting ready to just stop, negotiate, and then somehow, within a very short period of time, the Ukrainian president changed his tune. He's not negotiating, and some say that the Russians wouldn't pick the phone up when he called. Then some say that when the Russians called, he's ignoring them and telling them, I'm not negotiating, we're going to fight to the end, and yada, yada, yada. And who knows? Who knows if any of this is true? Now, go back to when we invaded Iraq, Kuwait, or something. I mean, they had news and they showed you the bombings, the explosions. It was all over. One thing, Log Cabin Loon made a video talking specifically about Snake Island and that, and this thing. There is no actual footage of any of this. The bridges that were blown up on the Dnieper, those were done by the Ukrainians to block the Russian vehicles from coming. Also, a lot of this stuff, okay, they blew up the vehicles. I don't see the Russian dead. And then, of course, my aunt there was saying that an airborne unit tried to attack an air base in this one village that was close to where the grandparents came from. So they grew up there as children. They know the base. They know where it is. And then come to find out, the Russian news said that there was a successful helicopter landing of troops. Basically, where this air base was here, and the air base that the Russians said that they did capture was far off and somewhere else in another part of the country. So you can't tell one from the other what's going on. So in the midst of all this yesterday, they said, okay, we're handing out weapons to all the citizens, and all men are supposed to go and receive guns. So we'll cover that point. But they're also showing you all these people in the subway, all these different people, these young men there with their wives and children in the subway, not going to get their rifle. And there was a news agency I watched that broadcasts news. It's based in Germany. I forget the name of it. But it's all in English, and they have different people there in the Ukraine reporting that speak fluent English. So they're contacting this network of all these bloggers or podcasts or whatever, and they're talking to these people. One was a woman, and the other, there's three of them, I think, that were men. I'd say anywhere from 25 to 35 years old. These three different men. And, they asked them what's going on, this and that, and everything else. And they're like, yeah, one guy is an ambulance driver, so he's not leaving his job or his position. The other one took his family out of Kiev and drove to a town where his family's from that's farther off, which a lot of people are doing. They're moving their wife and kids the hell out of the major cities. That's true. And they asked him, and he's like, oh, this is bad. I had to drive for hours. And they're like, are you going to go and volunteer to fight? And again, being in the military, part of my job was, when I was a NCO sergeant, is if we're going to do something, be it, on a ship it was putting out a fire or a crash on the flight deck. Okay, when you gather your people to go out there, you always look at them. Okay? You look at them, look them in the eyes, and reassure them we're about ready to go and do something, that there's a high probability they'll get killed while they're doing this. Okay? Doesn't have to be actual combat or attacking a tank. It could be putting out a fire or some other disaster. Ships, when they get holes in them, fill up with water pretty damn fast. So you better know what the hell you're doing when you go down there to plug the hole. You're going to drown. Okay? You have to be able to look at a person and tell that this son of a bitch is going to freeze up or just flip out and run on me. Okay? And look in these people's eyes when they asked him. They asked this guy to move his kids, and they asked some other long-haired sucker. His eyeballs were bouncing around in his head the whole time he was on an interview. Are you gonna muster up and go? And you can see that look. Now they're caught. They got to answer this tough question, and there's a look of fear in their eyes. Now, when the news showed that they were giving rifles to these people, okay, and all this other stuff, they showed a group of people. Number one, they were wearing uniforms. Number two, they're all carrying AK-74s. And their demeanor and their look, they're in front of an apartment building, a group of them, and one of them standing there, and they're translating what he's saying. Yeah, we're ready, this and that. These people did not look like average people in the subway or these bloggers or the guy on the street, okay? And they had a way of standing there carrying themselves that was different than the soldiers, because whenever they do show the actual Ukrainian soldiers out there, they look, and their demeanor is the same as a soldier anywhere. Okay, it's his job to be there. Okay, they stand there, they're looking, and it's like they've been doing this. This is their job. So they have a stance, but it is not like these people. They were issuing the guns as an aggressive stance, like we just got the green light to do whatever the hell we're going to want. Okay. And this is where the question arises in this whole muddled up mess of what's going on. There's a certain organization called the Azov or whatever, and the Russians do refer to them as Bandera, which is an old term from a separatist partisan group that was roaming around there in World War II. Ukraine had Ukrainian partisans, banderas, people that joined the German army. All kinds of strange things went on in Ukraine. It was pretty politically diverse, shall we say. There was a lot of things going on there during the war, during the German occupation. So now we got these people. And Bryant did mention that there are people with no insignia on their uniforms running around in the news, okay, in the capital cities. So it appears, and from what I've heard rumors of, the Russians are in there to take out certain military bases or these secret kind of black sites that have been put there by, they say, CIA or different entities that are associated with the current government somehow, but not officially. So it's like these conspiracy, dark ops stuff, or, as like I said, the deep state. And there is a trained military unit, okay, that has been integrated into the Ukrainian army. They used the term militias that ended up being taken in under the National Guard, and they are embedded in some of the units. Now, supposedly they passed out 20,000 rifles and so much ammunition, and basically they're calling up these people because they don't look like the average people that you see in the streets, in the subway, or getting on the trains. Now, another thing that was reported, the train station was packed, like I mentioned before. This is the main mode of transportation. If you want to go a distance, like I went from, I think it was Odessa. I rode the train from Odessa to Cherkasy. Okay, and that's how you travel across the country. It's the simplest way and the most economical way, if you can get a spot on the train, at least in first class. because it is a long ride. It's like a 10-hour ride or something across the country. So what people are going to do is they're going to go to their relatives, friends, or something outside the main city, and they're all trying to get on the damn trains to get out. And they had a woman there, and it shows the crowds were ungodly. They're just trying to get on any train getting out of there. And the train station wasn't attacked, but it's a mess. Okay. And then somebody started shooting because what it was, the people were pushing so hard to get on the train, the police started shooting in the air to get them to back off so no one was injured. But yes, there's a lot of refugee movement. Now, my aunt said that there is none, at least where she lives, or the roads aren't clogged with refugees, people ain't leaving. But the thing is, she's not in a major city either. Okay, she's in a town of some sort, and it's not been targeted. My mother-in-law lives in even a smaller village. It's in the middle of nowhere, and other than a curfew, nothing much has changed there. So now, also, the Ukrainians, before the building strike, said on their news, and we heard it live from over there, that groups or units were wandering around placing some sort of beacons on buildings and hospitals, schools, kindergartens, the apartment building, the famous thing, the missile comes in, hits that apartment building, are all being targeted. And, they were warning people if you see these devices to cover them up or whatever. Now, what doesn't make sense here is also at the same time they're broadcasting that the Russians are sending cruise missile strikes from ships out in the Black Sea. So if the Russians have the technology to launch a missile from out on the Black Sea and hit the northern part of the country, why would they be using like rudimentary locators? Okay, if that was their goal. Supposedly, all their strikes and all the things in the first few days of this were all carried out through the air with missiles. Now, there were reports that some of the precision guided ordnance missed, hit some things, killed some civilians. And the other famous photograph they put there of the apartment building, that was a plane or something that got shot down and hit the front of that one apartment building on day one. Now, we've all seen a dramatic photograph of this missile hitting this apartment building, okay, or blocky as they're called. It wasn't a large missile, okay, because anything I remember seeing that stuff in the Gulf War. If they launch some kind of precision munitions or a bomb from an airplane or any type of missile other than a very, very small missile, the damage would have been greater. And the whole thing looks bizarre, okay? And then, of course, the Russians deny that they're hitting any type of civilian targets, be it schools, hospitals, and that. They said that's not why we're here, that's not what we're doing. And the Russians also insist that this is not war. There was no declaration of war. They are not waging a war. They are doing a special operations, okay? And we'll get into the theories of that later. So now, recently, just within the past few hours, they said, okay, we're issuing weapons to these people. And the Russian news agency says that what they're doing is these this organization, they call them neo-Nazis or whatever, they're on the same damn list as the Ku Klux Klan, ISIS, and all this other stuff. So it would be like saying there's a national emergency here, and we're going to issue guns to the Ku Klux Klan and the Black Panthers and whoever, all these organizations, and they can go to a National Guard armory and we're going to arm them and they're going to be our militia to defend us. Okay. This ain't a good thing. Okay. And then, of course, the Russians said that they asked, are these people under the control of the president? And they said, kind of no, they're working on their own, okay, or out there. So there's questions of who these units with no insignia are, who controls them, command and control structure, who gives them orders. And I think what's going on now too is the big stall, because Putin yesterday, requested just stop everything, negotiate with us. The president's saying no. Then the president's changing his mind and saying yes. Then Germany, France, and everyone is sending Stinger missiles and Javelin missiles out of their inventory to the Ukraine, which, by the way, I've heard they have to repay them, for this. This isn't free, but they're going to send equipment and that. But to who? Are they sending them to the actual Ukrainian army? These bizarre reserve units that popped up out of nowhere, which some rumors say that they're releasing people from the prisons and arming them to attack the Russians. And then also, wonderfully, after all of Europe said that they're going to help them by giving them arms and equipment, they also declared that anyone who is a freedom fighter can go to the Ukraine and join the fight against the Russians. Okay, foreigners or anyone, they will be allowed to come in and join the fight. So, Al Qaeda, ISIS, whoever, you know, and when they did this back during the Yugoslavian war, Soldier of Fortune went down there and reported on it. And they actually went there and found out how, one guy went in there, enlisted, got in, was issued an ID card and an old World War II bolt action rifle. And he explained how the whole system worked, what they got paid, all this other stuff. And he said he was there on some operations. And, he was telling of his experience. And he said there were a lot of these characters that showed up from all over the place. Some were just crackpots, from the U.S., and some of them were somewhat pretty hardened criminals from different countries in Europe at the time, be it, West Germany, France, whatever. But these individuals, there's British soldiers there. There was a whole unit that went down there, I think from Sweden or Norway or something, and fought in this conflict. They came in mass, a whole battalion or something of them. That's how many all came down at once. And so when they were doing this, the guy said that these questionable figures, when they realized they weren't making any money or could just kill anyone they wanted or, go on a free-for-all, one guy come up with a plan about robbing a bank somewhere in Europe, and they all deserted one night and disappeared. Okay. So whenever you do this open-end freedom fighters come help us for democracy stuff, it's going to get nasty. Okay. You just can't open the doors to whoever shows up and start giving them weapons and stuff. I mean, this is ridiculous. So let's go. Like I said, everything's conflicting. Everything they say on the Ukrainian news is different from what is said on the Russian news, and everyone's blocking everybody's news and Facebook accounts and online connections, and just creating a lot of turmoil in that. Some reports, now let's go to the Snake Island thing. Okay, that's where Log Cabin Loons told about it. I guess there were like 80 people or so on this island base. And, it's the famous where the Russian says, look, we're Russian ships, surrender this and that. And then the guys tell them to go fuck off. And then blam. Supposedly there were 13 people killed or whatever. But then the Russians, because if you're just an infantry unit and they got a 5-inch gun or something and start blasting the hell out of your island, which isn't that big, you're in a world of shit. So they surrendered. So they get on the Russian ship. The Russian ship was attacked by these small boats. And then they finally took them to port, got them out, said, look, go home. Just sign a statement saying that, you surrendered, you can go home. And the Russian news agency shows the men, shows them sitting there. They were given rations, water, all this other stuff. They come in and they had transport and buses to take them on their way. They said, we didn't really kill. They said they didn't kill anyone. And now the Ukrainian government said that these 13 people are now heroes of the state, blah, blah, blah. But then now they have to, the Russian news agency was joking that now he has to come back. And the Ukrainians said, well, it appears that some of the people from there are still alive. So now their propaganda is falling apart. So this is going to be an information, disinformation war right now. What is actually going on? Yes, we've seen the same pictures. Apartment building gets hit. Schools, they never really I think they showed some buildings that might have been a school or something like that, but not a hospital. I've not seen an actual hospital hit by a missile and on fire. So it's hard to say. And they're showing the same thing. And they're not showing the actual bombing. Everyone says bombing noise, explosions in the distance. And it's like, my wife asked her aunt, did you go into town and see destroyed buildings? Oh, no, we hear things in the distance. So, if they attack a base or a depot or some kind of building somewhere outside of the city, yeah, you hear explosions, you hear gunfire and stuff. But, is it in the street in front of your home? Okay. So there's the question there. You really don't know what's happening. And there is no news of anybody showing any real coverage of what's going on, just glimpses, and it would be the same thing over and over again. The one building getting hit with a missile. And that's it. They show the same thing again and again and again. So you have to take that into your own regard. Now, let's go to how this is going to affect everyone globally. Some conspiracy theorist bloggers have put out there that what's going on is the deep state runs all these mysterious, call them black operations and things all throughout the world. And one place they like to go, much like post-World War II, Argentina, again, some nondescript little country down there, way down the tip of South America, ended up becoming, they had a military dictator that they can control. And all the plunder from Europe kind of ended up going there and was laundered throughout the years, well into the 60s. And it was run well with that dictator because what they did is, in the end, they went through and destroyed all the records of this. So by the time they got rid of Perón, that all the official documents and any evidence of this was all destroyed by the existing government. So they can never be held accountable. And this has come out recently in a lot of the documentaries about it. So one person said how this all works, and it was done in Syria, it's being done in the Ukraine, is there's all these weird things going on. Now, when you look at when the Russians went into the Ukraine for this special operation, they did not declare war on the Ukraine. They just went there to yes, they do want the government to stand down. Okay. They want elections. They want somebody else in there that is not doing, these under the table things. Because every single politician that got on the news this week, that was saying, oh, democracy, we can't allow this, we can't do this, blah, 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 all this other stuff. This guy said the reason is they're making millions of dollars with money laundering, all kinds of weird things going on there. And he explained in detail how it all works. Also, he mentioned, which I was afraid to ask the relatives about, are these biocides, where they say it's not going to come out of China this time, that they're actually manufacturing all this weird stuff in there, in these sites that were built either by certain corporations, and they mentioned, the U.S. may have some involvement in this. So these are the things he's destroying, are these sites. And what this guy said is, how do you attack the deep state? What is it? Who is it? You can't put your finger on it. You can't call any kind of international law on it because the people involved control the law. So he goes, what you do is you cut off their source of income. That's how you fight them. And, he was saying in Syria, what they did was they were somehow stealing oil or something. And it come to the point where what it was, they had to sink the ships and destroy the trucks that were transporting the oil out. Once they did that, which was, again, kind of illegal, using the military to just sink these ships. Once they did that, these operations stopped and they did not make money. They say there's evidence, but how do you bring evidence against the people who are legitimately in control and accuse them of this, when they control the courts and everything else? So you see the problem. So now we get into this weird thing where Russia's going in there, actually, a lot of people say, as an attack against the deep state. Henceforth, the outcry, and henceforth, all the different countries are not sending troops in, but sanctions and sending weapons, and now this call to just let anyone who shows up to stand for the cause, democracy and freedom, to go in there and do this, which is not going to be good. Now we have the nuclear deterrent stuff, which started just now, just on the news. Russia stated that, their nuclear systems on, and what the deterrent means is that their stations are manned and where the missiles are pointed. Okay, this is always military action, where we're going to point missiles at, which may be most of the European countries that are sending weapons there. So this was supposed to end in a short period of time. Go in there and get rid of this president, have him re-elect a new government. They don't want NATO in there, okay? He's not looking to expand across Europe. They're accusing him of starting a war, expanding across Europe, and taking back all of the former East European countries. That's not going to happen. That's not what he's going to do. I think the latest thing they said is they want to open negotiations, which they've been hemming and hawing about it. And what he wants to do is he wants to make the Ukraine a neutral country. Okay? Make it neutral, no NATO. But of course, he does have bases in that country. Okay? And, that's what they got to do. So now they're trying to go into the negotiation phase, and they're hemming and hawing. You guys remember something called the Korean War? They still are negotiating the end of that war after almost 70 some odd years. Okay, so this may turn into this. Everybody's hoping that they come to the table, make some sort of arrangement. Okay, and what basically the Russians, what they're saying they want is they don't want NATO in there. They don't want the Ukraine to go into NATO. Okay. and they want to make it a neutral country to where a lot of these strange things going on that all the other people are saying they're ending democracy. Uh, you want to get that out. And what he's doing is he's physically destroying these black sites or whatever. Can I have some more coffee? Okay, I guess the Russian news says that negotiations in Belarusia, they started peace negotiations as of now, which you add 8 hours, it's 10 something. It's an 8 hour difference there. So they've started to negotiate a peace. So hopefully all this crap will wind up, they say, by the end of next week. They'll come to some sort of agreement or something with this. Thank you. So, good news. But like I said, everything's changing by the hour. You don't know from one to the other how it's going. But yeah, that's about what it looks like. And if this is an attack on the deep state, now it's another thing. This may be one of the last broadcasts I do. This could be banned. I'm not talking about any kind of medical or U.S. elections, I guess, or any of the other things I got burned for on YouTube. But people are suppressing what other people are saying. I know Log Cabin Loon did one about that Snake Island and the nonsense. But yeah, and you know, back in the old days, I did go up against the Soviet Navy and the Soviet Army. Irregardless what you say, they are not people you really want to screw with. Okay. People say, well, they're not as advanced as us or whatever, but they just had 10 times more of everything: tanks, ships, the whole 9 yards. All right. So it's still a country that's technologically advanced where the Ukraine really isn't. Their air defense system's down. They have satellites, they have GPS. It's like my wife was saying, they're telling them to rip down road signs. They go, it's not 1942, it's 2022. The trucks or the lead truck probably has a GPS locator or somebody to drive them. So ripping the road signs down is insane. And the fact that these small incursions in that, the Russians can strike from the sky, okay, either with planes or they have cruise missiles. They have sophisticated weaponry, okay. If they really were going to flatten that country, they would have done it by now, okay. But yet everyone's caught up with the propaganda and the nationalism that they killed so many of them that they had to stop because their dead were in front of them. They couldn't advance any further. The only thing I'm worried about is they're going to get in this negotiations and this is going to drag on forever, just like in Korea. Okay. And that was one of the first UN wars we had. That's why we haven't had any since then. You know, so it's changing. And who do you believe? Okay. I know a lot of you fellas out there don't speak Russian. So watching the Russian news or whatever news from over there is difficult. I've been watching that one thing they do in English out of Germany. I forget the name of it, but they're all gonna go with the pro-Ukraine, pro-Western government slant. They're not going to show you or tell you anything different. And these people that are reporting for them, will make that statement because they're getting paid to, report the news the way they want it. So in reality, it's tough. I've been trying to follow it, and like I said, you can't tell who's telling the truth. Okay, the Russian news, it isn't the most reliable, never has been. But they're saying something totally reverse of what the Ukrainian news is saying. The only problem is there's a lot of forces there that are not the actual full-time Ukrainian army running around. And this is the confusing part of who's in there or what influences or who's behind this. The president's saying this and doing this and making these statements, and he's changing his tune from 1 hour to the next. So who knows? Okay, RT News last night. Last night, and the anchors there, what they're saying, yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like why would somebody be painting a building when they have cruise missiles that use GPS from a satellite that take them right to your front door? Okay, and this, my aunt also said she was gathering bottles. They're going to make Molotov cocktails. They're gathering them in the center of town to make fire bombs, which, any of the pictures I seen, it was like one tank would be patrolling. So yeah, maybe they can burn up one tank, but what good does that do when they can call in an airstrike on you? Okay, kind of makes no sense. Well, anyway, guys, have a good Sunday. It's just kind of tiring, and like I said, my wife just seen they're actually negotiating at this current time. So hopefully things will go a little bit smoother than they did in Canada. And another thing, we have our truckers freedom convoy here this week, because I guess the State of the Union is coming up the middle of this week, and they're trying to get to DC, and they changed the route. They're not taking Highway 40 and passing through me. They're coming from the West Coast on Highway 10, and they're going to go through the southern states before they hit I-95 and go up to DC. And that's what's going to go on. So that's the way it looks, fellas. We can all just hope and pray that, if this is the beginning of the end of a lot of the evil things going on there that affect all of us, okay? I can't mention them in this, but it looks like Ukraine will be where we had it. We started with the thing up in Canada was the first crack in their defenses. This going on in Ukraine is also wearing on the deep state. Okay, if this goes to where they do get out, what President Putin's objective is, if they do clear this out and clear out the operations there and return some sort of normalcy to that, you're going to hear our politicians here in the U.S. complain, because they're out of a shitload of money, and a lot of the companies that back this and whatever the hell they're doing there have lost a lot of money with this whole thing. Okay, but it's kind of difficult to say, well, they destroyed my secret facility that I have in this foreign country, that we're doing this and I'm getting paid to do this. So yeah, you see the situation. It's not going to happen that way. So we're going to see what happens here. But the only thing is I can say is, like most of you are saying, try to figure out the best you can, and it's difficult because you hear so much different stuff and contradictory stuff, and a lot of the conspiracy podcasts and that, there's some credence to it, but some of it gets too far-fetched or too out of control where it cannot be believable. All right, so you gotta figure that out for yourself. The only thing is, I hope that things get better for everyone. Okay, not just the people in Ukraine and in Europe, but I hope this stuff kind of starts to turn the tide and we start to get back to where everyone can go back to their somewhat normal lives. You know. All right, guys. Thanks and stay tuned.